I'm Steve Ralph, the host of Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. I greet you live from the All-America city of Morrisville in the Research Triangle Park, North Carolina. North Carolina is the eighth largest state in the Union, the United States of America, that is. And on this show, we talk about global affairs, innovation, and increasingly turbulent world politically and economically. In the U.S., as I begin my updates, no real monologue today, although we're going to be talking about cricket this week and Major League Cricket coming to Morrisville. I wanted to take a moment and just say that a federal jury will be considering indictment of Donald Trump in Atlanta. Flooding is rampant in the Northeast, canceling a lot of flights. And in North Carolina, the city of Durham is having a lot of issues with gun violence, with over 20 children being killed just in the last few months. But with that being said, starting on World Edition, I'm going to be trying to giving you what I call my world in brief, things going on in the world that we should know about. First of all, Jake Sullivan, America's national security advisor, has said that President Biden's administration will send F-16 fighter jets to Turkey in consultation with the United States Congress. This decision was announced just hours after Turkey's President Erdogan agreed to lift his veto on Sweden's bid to join NATO. And remember that the NATO summit is going on as we speak. A summit for the alliance begins on Tuesday in Vilnius, Lithuania, and Ukraine is at the top of the agenda. Meanwhile, Russia has launched air attacks on Odessa, Ukraine's largest port, and Kyiv, its capital, just hours before the start of the NATO summit. Ukraine's President Zelensky said the country will join NATO. Although accession is unlikely to be agreed at this summit, he does expect progress to be made in this regard. German inflation is on the rise. Israel's parliament gave preliminary approval to a bill limiting the power of the Supreme Court. Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister, wants to overhaul the justice system that has sparked protest against Israel. Foxconn, a Taiwanese electronics manufacturer, withdrew a $19.5 billion joint venture with Vedanta, an Indian firm, to build a semiconductor plant in Gujarat, India, the home of Indian Prime Minister, or the original home state of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The deal's collapse is a blow to the Prime Minister of India, who's been talking about this deal for a number of years now. Floods and monsoons, speaking of India, have actually killed 42 people in northern India, in Delhi, recorded 15 centimeters of rain on Sunday. And first week of July was the hottest week on the planet. Now, I'm going to end my opening today with just looking at the dilemma that President Biden is facing in Ukraine. America has been an undying or an avid supporter of Ukraine to fight Russia's invasion. But it's an obstacle to Ukraine's hope of rapidly joining NATO. They have not really been supportive of it. So as he goes into NATO summit, he must tread carefully. The president cannot be too obstructionist and block Ukraine being part of NATO, but he must grapple with the central dilemma, how to refuse their membership while it is still at war with Russia. This is not an easy task for the president. And so we're going to be monitoring how he's managing this situation and how he can balance not supporting Ukraine joining NATO fully, while at the same time supporting Ukraine's efforts against Russia. Now, we do know that the president has authorized 800 million of cluster ammunitions to Ukraine, which has actually been claimed to be war weapons of mass destruction by many other countries. But the president, on an interview with Fareed Zakaria, said that he believed it was justified to make sure that the Ukraine military was prepared to fight Russia. So we're going to be talking about some of this today and on Sasha Starr's show later this week. We're going to go ahead and get started. And of course, this week we will have cricket with former mayor of Morrisville, Mark Stillman, either coming on tomorrow or Friday. So thank you all so much. Let's get started, Mark. Oh, Shaquille Latimer and Derek Whitaker are with us, and Dr. Dan Worthington and Toby Duffy. Well, gentlemen, welcome to the show, and Nick Paudiva. We were going to begin today just diving into the NATO summit and kind of the dilemma that the president's facing, kind of not fully supporting Ukraine membership in the NATO, but at the same time committing against Russia in this war. Just want to get, I guess we'll start with Dan Worthington because he's a military expert. I know he's not a big fan of President Biden, but what do you think, Dan, about this whole idea of Ukraine joining NATO?
I think that, unfortunately, I agree with President Biden that Ukraine is not ready for NATO membership, and they're in the middle of a conflict with Russia, and we're not, nor is NATO willing to commit troops to that conflict. So they should not be admitted at the present time under the current circumstances. It would require for the NATO to intervene more directly in the conflict, and that's just not in the cards.
Hey,
Yeah.
Dan, just out of curiosity, because I had also seen in the news, and apparently one of the Trump allies, Gates, is a co-sponsoring a measure to prevent Biden from sending these particular kind of bombs to Ukraine. But it does look like Biden is trying to send cluster bombs to Ukraine, and I just wondered what your thought was about that. I'm not that familiar, having not served in the military, with what cluster bombs do and all of that, but it does seem like there is some political divide as to whether we should be sending these type of bombs or not. So just wondering your thoughts around that as a person that served in the military.
We shouldn't be sending cluster bombs. They are very effective, but they're brutal, and they've been there are conventions against them. Once we do that, then the Russians are just going to do tit for tat, and it gets more brutal. I mean, why go there? They're certainly effective against the kind of trench warfare the Russians are fighting along their fronts. They're fighting a World War II style entrenched positions in the territory they've taken over from Ukraine, and the cluster bombs aren't an effective way, but they're just going to murder hundreds of thousands of people, and the Russians will retaliate. So far, it's interesting. The tit for tat has been, up until recently, has been fairly moderate. The Russians could do a lot more if they wanted to devastate Ukraine and bomb them to hell. They could. They haven't done that. They could bomb them to oblivion, just like we could bomb, but then we'd have nuclear war. What's the point of that? So we need to. Our responses in Ukraine have to be measured. I know, Sasha would probably disagree with me, but it's not something we want to get drawn into, because we didn't have World War III. We don't want a world war over this.
Hey, just one other quick question. Just one other quick question if I can.
Yep. We Shaquille and Derek, what do they have to say this morning? Just welcome to the show.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'll just make a brief comment that I don't think it's a good idea for NATO to have Ukraine as a member. I think that it would make more sense for there to be a bit of a buffer between the rest of Europe and Russia. But just on the issue of cluster bombs, I think something like half the countries on Earth have banned the use of cluster bombs, and this was actually something that was subject of a parliamentary inquiry in Australia a number of years ago in relation to Australian military forces that were serving alongside our allies, our US allies, in Afghanistan and in Iraq, where the Russians were using, where the Americans were using cluster bombs in breach of our rules. And the parliamentary inquiry was, are our military personnel allowed to participate in that, especially considering it's a wartime and they're serving alongside, an army person from an allied country. I personally don't think that cluster bombs should be used in most circumstances. As I said, my country and all the countries that I'm citizens of have banned the use of them, and I would certainly advise extreme caution before the US military starts using cluster bombs.
Yeah. Derek, any thoughts before we go to Sasha and Toby?
Actually, I'll surprise all of you by saying that the joining NATO is a bad idea for Ukraine itself. I'll tell you why. What is the main advantage of being in NATO? The main advantage is so-called Article 5, when there is attack on one member of NATO, is an attack against all NATO. Sounds wonderful, but in reality, it is not so. In reality, the attack, first of all, let's clarify what is an attack. It's an invasion of a country with thousands of tanks and so on. What about if it's a simple blockade of a country? Let's see if the Baltic states are being blockaded on the Baltic Sea. So the NATO countries, they don't have even an access to these Baltic countries to defend them if they wanted to defend them. And let's assume that they want to defend them, but how are they going to do it if they cannot even enter those countries? What about cyber attacks? What about different methods? I forgot about corruption. Corruption is probably the mightiest attack. And this is what you're going to do is they start the Third World War because of the corruption. But each member of NATO is corrupted to a certain degree, give or take. So this Article 5 is utterly a nonsense. And I wish when at least once it would be tried to see if it works or not. I'm telling you, I read the Article 5. There will be a reaction, according to Article 5, which may include the military force, but not necessarily so. It could be consultations. It could be presentations in some political bodies like United Nations, for example, which is impotent, as we know, for all intents and purposes. So there is, where is Article 5? It's a fiction. Let it be that way. People believe in fictions. Some people believe that the earth is flat. And they say, the earth is flat, what a wonderful world. So there is an Article 5. What a wonderful world. So here is NATO, here is Article 5, we're all protected. No, the country must be able to protect itself. And only then think, there's Article 5, there's something else, maybe.
Yeah.
I think that for Ukraine, the best model would be something close to what Israel have. Israel is not a member of any blocs, but it has a treaty with the United States of America. And if you want to know, the NATO is largely United States of America, because if United States will not comply with the statutes of Article 5, and in some cases, United States can initiate Article 5, like it was after 9/11. Okay, but in many other cases, Washington will say it's not a big deal. I mean, what can we do? Start the Third World War because of somebody will attack Estonia, which has a population of 1,300,000. So this is war. This is unrealistic. What Israel has is realistic. It has absolutely impeccable armed forces. They have. Let's talk about very softly about nuclear arms, which nobody can prove they have, nobody can deny they have. Israel itself says that we don't have any atomic weapon, but if needed, we will use it. So what can you say?
To be fair, there is one country that we know doesn't have weapons of mass destruction. That would be Iraq. Remember that invasion to get rid of the weapons of mass destruction that they had? So to be fair, we definitely know that they don't have any.
Yeah, they don't have them because they moved them to Syria.
Yeah, probably.
We're going to give all the guests a chance. So, Jacoby, what's on your mind today? We focused a little about international issues, and we're going to also dive into some political things. I heard a consultant yesterday speak, a political scientist in Raleigh.
I thought Sasha was going to surprise us when he said, I'm going to surprise you all. I thought he was going to say, I've now decided that I absolutely love Donald Trump and I think he's the best president that the United States has ever had. But no, he didn't surprise me that way.
Hey, speaking of
He
which,
is the best president being charged. Out of those who've been charged, he is by far the best.
But meanwhile, the political consultant that I heard yesterday speak, or he's actually a really revered consultant, a Republican, but really more of a moderate. He was the right-hand guy for Richard Burr, Senator Burr. He says that he believes that the nominees of each party for the president aren't even in existence yet, and that on both sides there are going to be people that we haven't even heard of. He drew analogies of how in 2008 it was Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama came out of nowhere, and he thinks the same thing is going to happen. He also likened it to Jimmy Carter in 1976 coming out of nowhere. So it begs me to the question, who else is out there that we might not have heard of that could be running for president? I don't know if you guys have any ideas, but I guess it could happen that the nomination, that they would actually on the floor, that Joe Biden would not have enough votes to be the nominee. So that could be interesting if it's like a floor nomination where they renominate a president. You guys have any ideas on both sides?
I think absent him stepping down, the Democrats will give him the nomination. And look, it is looking like a rematch, although DeSantis could take away some of that vote. Look, I'd love to see Kristi Noem run for the Republicans. I think she's done a great job in South Dakota, so I think she'd be a great Republican candidate. And on the Democrat side, I actually think somebody who's young, relatively charming. I don't agree with the man's politics, but I actually think that Gavin Newsom would be a good candidate for the Democrats to run with. So I do believe, as I say, I don't agree with his politics, but I think that he would actually be a reasonable candidate.
Toby, do you have any ideas out there of any people you're out there?
If Donald Trump decides not to throw his support behind the Republicans, a third-party ticket, Donald Trump with RFK Jr. as his vice president, that ticket, I reckon, would be a killer.
Hey, speaking of a third-party candidate, and I know we've got people here that are associated with the No Label Party, and I definitely want to hear from Jacoby as well. But I have heard some folks that have said that one of the things that might be happening with a third-party candidate who is already declared that it could throw the election to Donald Trump or DeSantis, whoever runs for the Republican Party, because it is a known fact that Cornel West is running as a third-party candidate, and it is already some speculation that he will split the vote in the Democratic Party. And I think that is a legitimate concern and a legitimate danger and everything, because he is a well-known academic. He definitely has some people that follow his views, and he definitely has some radical views, but he also has some views that are considered mainstream in some ways as well. So I could literally see him splitting some votes, particularly in the minority community. But I'd love to hear if Toby has any thoughts about that.
What views does Cornel West have that is considered mainstream? Please, this I really want to hear.
Well, I mean, he's definitely had some thoughts around affirmative action and some other things that are more on the Republican side and all of that. And some people may consider those mainstream views and all along those lines. He's also had some views that are on some other issues that might be considered conservative views as opposed to liberal views. So we're talking about his politics. I haven't studied all of them, but I do know that the notion that I brought up was the notion of him splitting the ticket. And that's what I was curious to see what Jatofi had to say, and not so much his views per se and all of that. But definitely, is there any danger of Cornel West splitting the ticket?
I'm going to sit here riveted at Jatovi's comments on the very conservative Cornel West.
Just like Jill Stein, Cornel West will get votes, and actually he'll split some of the votes, just because some people are hungry for that third party candidate. Same thing with the No Labels Party. No matter who they put up, because nobody knows what their policies are. They haven't posted them. They haven't even put up a candidate yet. So people are going to be hungry for that as well. What I heard from another political analyst is that those independents that split towards Trump, or that was split last time between Hillary and Trump, those actual independents that are open to the idea of a third party are splitting towards Biden more so than splitting towards Trump as they did last time. So to answer, Steve, your question, if there's a nobody out there that may arise and take over the top two spots? Honestly, no, because presidential, in terms of our history, the president normally gets the nomination by their party automatically. I mean, there really hasn't been a true challenge to a incumbent president coming through. So Biden will get the nomination on the Democrat Party. And in terms of Trump, Trump has such a dug in group behind him blindly, no matter what he does. As he stated, that he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and he would get more, he would keep still his base. That's true right now, and it's holding true. I mean, the man is, they're picking a grand jury
But I think it
currently
will-
in Georgia for
But-
going on currently right now, and people are still dug in, and for his fourth indictment, and
So-
people are still dug in.
But let's look at, I mean, real quickly before we get into some other issues. You're giving him, so we have well, I don't know if Dan Worthen is an independent, but maybe he's a moderate Republican. But voters like him, here's the bottom line: they don't want Joe Biden back in the White House, but the honest to God truth is, if Trump is a nominee, they're basically handing Joe Biden the presidency for a second term. Right?
I agree with
And
that.
so I think that's the challenge the Republicans have: is if it's not Trump, is it DeSantis? Is it somebody else? Is it Nikki Haley?
I have a
You know-
candidate for you, Steve. Doug Burgum, who's the governor of North Dakota. He's somebody that everybody really should take a look at. The media is ignoring him. He is a Republican, but he's a software billionaire, literally, and seems to be incredibly smart, focused in on the issues and the issues that really relate to all Americans. He would be a great choice for president of the
Now,
United States.
you guys are going to laugh at me. Of course, I'm giving my family bias. He's not really well known in political circles.
That's
but,
the real problem. The real problem is what you just said.
no, but John,
so proud.
I think there have been some people around his inner circle asking John Chambers to consider a run for the White House. He is a Republican. He's ran a multi-billion-dollar company. He's well respected around the world. He knows world leaders. And at a time with digital innovation and technology, I can't think of a better person that could actually lead America forward. Now, the question is, would he be able to get the name recognition in time? Would he want to do something like that? But I think he ought to think about it. I think the country could use somebody that's coming in from a business sector experience that
The
can make it
problem-
happen, right?
The problem is that the political base in the GOP right now is so locked into Trump, and nobody is going after Trump. Reason because the whole base of the party the loud base of the party is currently behind Trump. So you have all the politicians from Ramaswamy all the way up to even DeSantis trying to be the Trumpiest version of Trump to keep the actual base together. Nobody wants to attack him because as soon as you attack him, Trump turns that base against you and then you lose in the polls. That's why Ron DeSantis, he is struggling not only because people are following his politics now in Florida, hence the reason tourism in Florida is down 30% from 2022 to 2019, because the state itself has been deemed, because of its policies, deemed hostile to certain actual groups. So you have that starting to permeate through the actual independent population. So the independents aren't going for DeSantis as much. So yeah, the base itself. That's why look at Rick.
So
Scott,
sad.
Tim Scott is trying to run a little bit to the right. Even Nikki Haley is trying to run more right than what she actually is. It's because they cannot break into that base. So Steve, the individual that you're just talking about, he has no chance unless he runs to the right of Trump, and nobody is doing and grabs that base. And it's hard to grab that base right now because they're so locked in Trump.
Before we get into my last thing I'll say, and I got this idea from the Jack Ryan series, which is now on the last season 4, Hispanic president. And this, the president's a Hispanic, and the
There
only
are a
ones
couple
that
of
we
those
have.
that are already running. The gentleman from Miami has put his name in the hat, and it definitely doesn't seem to be getting any
Is that Rubio?
traction. the gentleman that is the mayor of Miami, Suarez, I believe is his name, and everything. But he has put his name in the hat as of about
And that's another. Why don't we have mayors run? My final thing is I've always wondered this. Mayors are like for example, if you're the mayor of let's use an example, New York City, right, or the mayor of Atlanta, which is you're basically a leader of international cities, budgets that are larger than nations. You never see a mayor step forward to run.
No,
for the White
mayors
House.
have run in the past after
Giuliani
the
ran.
mayor's
Yeah,
office,
they became
and they have
the,
not had much luck when they have run. Giuliani definitely ran, and he was the mayor of New York at one time. I want to say that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jacoby, but I want to say that Andrew Young, who was the mayor of Atlanta, ran back in the day and everything. And there has been talk, and that's a name that I was getting ready to mention. And we're talking about family knowledge and everything. I have known him for a while, and there are things about him that are in good policies, but there are other things that were not that good in New Jersey. But there have been people that have tossed around Cory Booker's name as a candidate for the Democratic Party and all of that. And Dan, I'm not saying that I am.
He might be making a comeback. Booker, Spartacus, gotta love it.
So just coming back to the point that you made there, Steve,
Cory
about
Booker.
whether a billionaire would be a good or a person that's run a billion-dollar company would be a good candidate. That's really not how your politics work. If we look at the 2016 Republican debates, there was a woman there, Carly Fiorina, is that her name? Former CEO of HP, business person, seemed like a really great female candidate, didn't get the nomination. And I think, regardless of what Jacoby has said in his depiction of the Republican Party, we need to remember how the political system works, both for Democrats and Republicans, which is that when you go to primaries, it's the people that are going to vote in those primaries that determine things. And most people in most countries are not that politically active, so they don't go to party room meetings. So what you see, people that are that interested, is you see a lot of activists, you see a lot of people that have, very right-wing or very left-wing views that tend to dominate in the party votes. That's both as I said, that's both Democrats, Republicans, that's the Liberal Party and Labor Party in Australia, or the Tories and the Labor Party in the UK. It's the same everywhere. And that's why I think we get candidates across the political spectrum that are very often not what we would think would be the best person for the job, and also not particularly in touch with what the people want.
No, but Shaquille, hold on a second, because I've got a question for Shaquille that I have observed. I've made this observation on this show before and everything. There are a lot of people that vote straight ticket. They vote according to, and even Nick has brought up before, the various lobbies and everything. And I don't know that they necessarily always study the issues and are analyzing the issues. And a lot of times they are voting according to who they are being asked to endorse. And I would say that is I hate to say it, but the vast majority of American voters and all in that space. But I was wondering, is that a American trend, or is that something that you see around the world? Because you are a world traveler.
We don't have in most Western countries, or certainly most countries that have the Westminster type system, we don't have a system that's the same as yours. So you don't vote directly for the leader of your country if you're in the UK or Australia. You vote for your local representative, and the leader of the party that has the most amount of seats in the House of Representatives ends up becoming the Prime Minister. Those countries that do have a president will normally have a president to take the role that would have been had by the Governor General. So oftentimes you see the presidents of countries not actually have an awful lot of power. That's not always the case. There are exceptions to this, of course, but your system is totally different, because you can actually vote for example, you could vote for a Republican president, but you could vote for a Democrat Senate and House, and the other way around. So this is a different thing. But talking about straight voting, yes, that is an issue when you look at how people vote in national elections. But the thing is that for candidates to get the primary nominations, that happens in a different part of politics. That happens in party rooms. That happens in those delegate meetings. And look, for example, when Bernie Sanders and the so-called Bernie Bros expressed extreme dissatisfaction in Washington State because superdelegates had overridden their vote in order to give the nomination to Hillary Clinton. So they turned around and said, well, obviously our votes don't count. And I think that if you are a Democrat in Washington state, that would be a legitimate complaint. Same sort of thing would happen for Republicans in places like Alaska or Alabama. So what I'm saying is, if you're looking at who's going to be the best person to do the job, your political system, same as ours, your political system doesn't do a very good job of actually putting the best people into those positions. You really have to pick them.
Obviously.
I'll agree that the political system itself doesn't put the best person there. It definitely puts the most popular, the name recognized person there. And just to go back to your point that, you know, the loudest, I agree with the loud and all that, but the way that the polling is currently and the way that Trump's base is, and sadly, the way, and this is nothing against the Republican Party, but this is just the way the Republican Party is currently. The current Republican Party is locked in behind Trump. He has a solid 30 to 40% that won't vote for anybody else but Trump. You have that. That's why he's polling at about 50 some odd percent. He's 20 to 30 points higher than number 2. At this point, under almost 4 indictments. So it's not that I'm saying I'm trying to cast a bad view on Republicans. I'm just casting a truthful view that's where they're locked right now. Hence the reason why the candidates themselves aren't attacking Trump directly. The candidates themselves are trying to out-Trump Trump. And when DeSantis, when he points out that he's done that, when he actually ran an ad trying to say how bad Trump was for saying anything positive about the LGBTQIA community, and that he was this manly man, that he's this far right of Trump. That's what he did. That's legitimately what he did. And that's why the log cabin Republicans came out against DeSantis for the ad that he ran, talking about how manly a man he was and how bad it was.
Hey, Jacoby, he should have got bare chested on a horse like Putin.
Literally,
did, right?
that's what he did in the actual ad. He actually had at one point these shots from Top Gun of bare-chested men, and then there was one point where he even had a shot of I forget the actor's name but it was from American Horror Story, I think it was, and he was a serial killer. I guess he just looked like a manly man. It was Beale. He played Dark Knight.
So let's respond to
it was just interesting. That's the way the Republican
perhaps to Toby, the reason why DeSantis got that sort of backlash is because the Republican base that you seem to always rail against and depict in the worst possible light actually are not against the LGBTQ community. And what they did was they responded by disagreeing with the very, very right-wing perspective that Ron DeSantis has. Now, Ron DeSantis is on the right of Donald Trump. That's the reason why I think in 2016, Donald Trump appealed to people that would not ordinarily vote for the Republicans. That's why he managed to win those Rust Belt states. So, you know, if you're on the one hand criticizing the Republicans for trying to out-Trump Trump, but Trump was never really a right-winger. He's a former Democrat. He's a business person. He was never a right-winger. Those people are trying to go back to some Republican ideals, and they're being criticized by groups because those people are out of
so Trump actually has campaigned extreme right-wing ideologies.
In your view.
Ideology.
Really?
Yes, he has. And then
that's your view to take in everything that's not coming out of the mouth of Democrats.
Shaq, you want an example? Same with you, Dan. The whole build the wall and the way he pushed that out there, that whole narrative was extremely right wing.
It really, because that's a Democrat policy. So was it? Right
Yeah, originally it was.
So again, did you listen to what I just stated? Did you listen to what I just stated, or did you just jump in without listening? I said the way he campaigned and pushed that policy was extremely right wing. That is different from saying that the ACA or the American Health Care Act was, oh, that's a right-wing policy or that's a left-wing policy. Well, the American Health Care Act came out of Mitt Romney's idea based out of Utah. So therefore, the way
he was
pushed
in
it out there.
Massachusetts.
The way Mitt Romney pushed that, Mitt Romney had that policy at his home state.
In Massachusetts. Yeah, he was governor of Massachusetts.
My apologies, Massachusetts. Mitt Romney, Massachusetts.
It was never flown in Utah.
Hey, quick question. And speaking of things that won't
Okay.
fly, hold on a second. Hold on a second. Speaking of things that will fly or won't fly, I do have a question because in some cases with politics, there are people that own both Democrat and Republicans that hold things hostage, and that apparently is going on. And I'd love to hear Dan's thoughts around this, around the military, because apparently for the first time there will not be a Marine leader because there is a senator, a Republican senator in this case, who is upset at the military policy around abortion. So because he is protesting against a Pentagon policy that allows travel allowances and time off for military personnel who want an abortion, apparently Tommy Tuberville is holding up several appointments. They're saying he's blocking over 200 military appointments, and it could get up to as many as 600 or something along those lines. And there is going to be a acting leader of the Marines, but in terms of a actual military leader, this will be the first time that the Marines haven't had a leader in like 164 years and everything. So how much are we concerned about politicians of any sort that are using their stand to hold and things hostage and all along those lines? I think we could even say the same with some of the budget issues as well. But I just wanted folks' take on this. And Dan, you're a military person, though. That's why I threw it at you.
Oh, I think the kind of people that are promoting into positions, Republicans need to be concerned. The kind of things they're doing to the military to make it less capable and less ready for doing its role under the Biden administration should concern all Americans.
Dan, could you elaborate on the make less ready?
Well, I mean, the purpose of the military is to fight and defend the liberty of the United States and to be a deadly force. All of the woke policies of the Biden administration has done nothing but
what woke policy?
undermine the military readiness of.
You're using buzz terms. Can you elaborate on what woke?
Well, I think you know exactly what I mean.
What is a woke policy?
Toby,
What does
let
the
him
term
speak.
mean?
You know exactly what he means. We're not going to get into these little nitty-gritty details that you do every time.
Thank you for your interjecting. Thank you for
Yeah,
interjecting.
exactly. So, Jatovy,
Yeah, just
what
like
do
you
think
did to
I-
Toby when I asked
Dan,
Mark a
I'm
question.
asking Dan.
Just like you
What
did
do
when I
you
asked
think I
Mark a
mean,
question.
Jatovy?
I'm asking Dan a question.
Well,
I'm
I'll
asking
ask you
Dan.
back, Jatovy. What do
Yeah,
you
and I
think
asked
I
Mark a
mean by
question
woke
last
policy?
show.
You're over
you
talking Dan,
just
Shaq. I
suck it
can't
up.
hear him.
That's okay. Jack can overtalk me. I don't care.
Okay, so what is a woke policy that you're talking about? Can you
Dan,
help me
don't
out?
even
on
hear him. Don't even hear him. You were trying to say something, so continue saying your point. And if Jacoby wants to act as though he has no idea what you're talking about when you say
I
woke
don't,
policies,
Shaq.
don't even hear him.
I really don't, and that would help me out. So
Okay, good. Well, the rest of us do.
help me out.
The rest of us do. So,
Okay,
so
Shaq,
if
then
you've
what
never
is a
heard,
woke
if you've
policy?
never heard Voitress before,
Shaq,
that's
what is a
fine.
woke policy?
We're not going to answer you. I'm not going to answer you. It's up to Dan.
So
if he
you
wants
want me to be ignorant on what you guys are talking about, so I can't.
No, I think you know exactly what
Well,
You
policy
help me
that
out.
the Biden administration has promulgated in the military
What is a woke
to make
policy?
it weak and undermine the command structure. It's the
How?
reason why they're having a difficulty recruiting military recruits, because people who are traditionally patriotic and had traditional American values won't join the military anymore because
You're
the military
using buzzwords.
is shifted
You're
from
using buzzwords.
traditional American values. And
What
so
are
I think
traditional
most
American
Americans
values?
understand exactly what I'm talking about. You don't,
No,
because
no.
you have no idea. You're clueless.
Because I'm asking,
and you
asking
always
you
have been
a question.
clueless.
I'm
So
asking
let's
you
just
a
leave it
question.
there.
So what is a woke policy?
We're
What is
not, okay, Jacoby, we're not even going to humor it, okay? because you know exactly what we're talking about. And
Dave,
Hold on a second, Shaquille and Dan. Hold on a second, Shaquille and Dan.
what you want us to
The
do is
question that I originally asked, and we can get back into
Well, against it,
definitions
and-
later and everything, but the question that I originally asked is from a leadership standpoint, because they're saying that this could be up to 650 nominations that are blockaded, and it seems to me that if you want to have a effective, and I do have relatives and others that have been in the military, that you need to have solid leadership. And if there's going to be some of these positions that are not being in office because you are protesting whatever the policies are, and all along those
Well, if the
lines-
Bidens want to nominate solid leaders, fine, but they're not.
Well, let me just say a couple of things. I know you want to say something. Let me just say a couple of things. Firstly, I find it fascinating that when you go back and look at General Eisenhower's medals, how many medals he had on his chest, and you have a look at how many medals Milley has, and to see the difference, and you think, well, wow, what did Milley do that Eisenhower did for him to have this big chest full of medals? What we are seeing people being promoted because of cultural issues.
Yep.
And we're also seeing a very big percentage of Americans and people around the world that are very negative on America and its history, that complain about the United States going into other nations, interfering in other countries' politics, interfering militarily in other countries. They're colonizing, all this sort of stuff. So with that sort of background, I think it's very difficult for somebody to say, I believe in my country and I believe what my country is doing around the world is right. And I think that being prepared to sacrifice my life for the freedoms and liberties of others is in fact a worthwhile and patriotic thing to do. It's hard for people to have that sort of patriotism when they're constantly being told that the United States is broken, the United States is racist, the United States is oppressive. When you're constantly being bombarded with that sort of messaging, of course you're going to have, flat or poor recruitment numbers. Derek,
I'm going to say this from a foreign perspective.
you're American.
Put that
An
aside.
American expecting.
At the advantage of growing up in a foreign country outside of America. Let me put it to you this way, guys. America, wake up. Sorry, America, wake up. We look at the foreigners. You think China's intimidated by the Biden?
Oh, no.
You think Russia's intimidated by the Biden? Do you think that China is going, oh, the US military are really getting stronger because they're into woke policy?
What is
Bravo.
woke policy,
Canada.
Dan?
Let's not
Dan,
attack
here,
America.
what is woke
because it's
policy?
woke. Let's not
What
attack
is
the American
woke
army because they've got woke.
Let Derek
Oh,
talk.
okay.
What does
That-
woke mean?
It's just crazy philosophy, guys. America, Democrats, wake up. You don't intimidate the rest of the foreign world. They don't care. They want to look at
We'll be able to.
Oh, look, it's border policy.
But Derek, hold on a second. Derek,
Derek,
do you think they care? Hold on a second, Derek. But do you think they care about a abortion policy that is out there being holding somebody hostage because of the policies that one person is protesting and everything? So therefore, he is holding hostage by not doing it.
Yeah.
It's like filibustering.
So-
Basically.
Here.
Everything both Dan, Derek, and Shaq said doesn't even have to do with why they're being held up. And then on top of that, when
Really?
it isn't. Tommy
It doesn't have
Tuberville is
anything to do with it, does it, Jacoby?
Dan, are you listening?
Tell me why then, okay? You give me the reason.
Let's
Because
what
they're
you got
being
about Tommy
held up.
Tuberville. So
Tommy Tuberville is holding up the actual nominations because his complaint is that he feels, which is an incorrect feel, and actually every Republican is against him on this, even Mitch McConnell. He's saying that he doesn't want abortions to be paid by the American people and the military. That is why Tommy Tuberville is holding these nominations up. And then on top of that, it has nothing to do with quote unquote woke. And you guys
Good
don't
for
know what
him.
woke
Good for
means.
Tuberville.
So
we don't know what woke means
No,
because
you don't.
only you know what woke means. Jacoby,
no,
because
no,
because
didn't even say
even,
that.
You
because
don't.
even
No.
the
Didn't say that.
smallest amount,
Didn't even
No,
say
you
that.
don't know.
smallest amount
You
of
don't know.
criticism of your side
But
of
again-
policy.
So okay, so
This-
Jacoby, this
And all the time that you've been coming on to
Yep,
this,
yep, yep, Chad,
and
you're
it's
saying
never
that
once
person
heard
doesn't-
you say
you
No, no, no,
promulgate
no, no,
that's
no,
not
no,
what
you're saying
happened.
nothing.
opinion.
I just
You're
said
talking
that.
over each other and I can't hear.
You don't know.
You're
Hold on a
talking
second.
over each other.
You
I
must be
can't
a
hear.
freaking idiot.
Oh, thanks, Dan. Love you too.
Thank you. Yeah.
Now
Well,
let people
I
speak
haven't heard
one at a
anything
time.
come out of your
Hold on
mouth.
a second.
It's been very
We're trying to have a
intelligent.
civil discussion. That's usually
Yes.
what we try to do. So if we can have one person at a time and everything, we can agree to disagree on a lot of different issues.
Yeah.
But let's at least give folks a chance to hear each other, because there was a lot of talking over. I'd hate to see what the radio version is going to
But,
sound
mate,
like
the-
and
the
everything.
issue-
You've even
the
brought that up
issue
Shaquille,
is that we
in the
can't.
past and everything. So let's hear what Jatovi's got to say. Then I'll hear what you got to say and what Derek's got to say. Let's at least have a civil discussion.
Thank
But, Mark, we
you.
can't.
So to have a civil discussion, just want to point out again, I have never said that I'm the only person who knows what woke is. Plenty of people understand what the term means, and plenty of people understand what actually what it's about. And when you're talking about woke, again, please elaborate, because you could be talking about the wrong thing just because you're wanting to say something bad about Biden and you're using a buzzword. And to make it more educational for the listener and the viewer, we want to make sure that we elaborate everything so everybody is educated on that same level. Nothing against your educations, because again, I think all three of you guys are pretty smart. So I think you can use your words to actually explain and express more. And I would love that, because that helps out in the discussion. And then the final point, just as I stated, Tommy Tuberville isn't talking about woke policy and all this other stuff. Tommy Tuberville is actually holding up these nominations. And honestly, the only person to do this in a very long time, holding up these nominations. Even under Trump, this was not done. But under Biden, Tommy Tuberville is saying that he wants to hold up these nominations based on this abortion issue. Nothing to do with anything else, nothing to do with LGBTQIA rights, nothing to do with anything else, just this one issue. And so that is the problem that Tommy Tuberville is having right now, because he's going against not only the Democrat Party, not only Biden, but he's also going against his party, which is begging him to do that. And when we talk about military preparedness, right now, Tommy Tuberville is the one stopping military preparedness, because we cannot fill these positions. So that is the point. And if you want to dispute those points, let's talk about that and have a civil discussion.
Okay,
Let's not go down the road of arguing over all this crazy.
So firstly, the reason why I'm not going to go into some elaborate explanation of what woke policy is, there's a couple of reasons. One, because unlike you, Jatovi, I don't like to talk down to people and treat them like they're imbecilic children. Okay? And I think that our audience.
Okay, now you're going into these ad hominem attacks. Can you please move to the point?
Hang on, we were very
Ad hominem.
We're not going to talk about the policy. Don't attack me. Talk about the policy. That is a civil discussion.
We were very quiet while you were talking. So I don't want to treat people that way. Okay. The second thing is that whenever we try to give some sort of explanation, you twist and turn what we say.
More ad hominem attacks. Let's talk about the policy and not talk about me.
I thought you said you didn't want to overtalk anyone.
No ad hominem. Don't talk about me. Don't let my name leave your mouth. Let's try that. See if you can actually have a
You named us three, and you asked. You made some points, and I'm responding to them, Jatovi. Okay, so I'm responding to you.
No, you're not. You're actually talking about me.
I'm not responding to you. Okay. Well, you tell me, Jatovi, as usual, because you know everything. You tell me what I'm trying to do, please.
Okay, Dan, can you please talk about the policy?
No. Don't go to Dan. Don't go to Dan. You interrupt.
Oh, it's okay. I'll talk about it. Tuberman, yeah, I think enough has been enough. I think Tuberman's dying on this hill because it's an emblem of, or symbolic of, the whole thing the Biden administration is trying to do to change the culture in the military. And, they've been, the Biden administration and their people have been hostile towards Christians, hostile towards traditional American values, and other things that would make the military stronger. And it's true. It has been happening. And we've been seeing people exited from the military for taking positions that traditionally wouldn't get them evicted from the military. It's one of the reasons we're having a hard time getting people to go in the military, because people who had traditionally go in the military are not going in the military. The people that have patriotic values and I believe in service to their country are not serving the country because they don't want to serve under Biden and the generals and the other people that he's selected as military leaders. I wouldn't serve under them. They suck.
Now,
Well, let's not.
Is that clear enough?
in
Was
terms of,
investigating members that they thought were right wing and basically saying that they were akin to terrorists. So if that's how you're going to be treated for having the wrong political opinion, why would you join?
Yeah, that's exactly it. You know,
Now-
so your
now,
people,
membership-
all the people on your side, the left, which is your left, have managed to screw this country up so badly, and try to change the make wrong right and right wrong, and turn everything upside down. And that's sort of the goal. It's destroying and undermining the underpinnings of democracy, of liberty, of freedom. The summer of love, right?
so
No,
in
they were
terms
peaceful.
of- in
They were
terms of
basically
these
peaceful
policies-
protests then.
So
I know
in
they're
terms of the
mostly
policies
peaceful,
that you're
but with
complaining
little
about,
fires in the background and rocks being thrown and brought in and bolts. I mean, it was traditional classic warfare, wasn't it?
But I think
So,
the real
Dan, in
problem
terms of the
is
policies
this,
that you're
is
speaking
people
about,
on the left take
where-
the smallest amount of criticism and then try to see where someone else is coming from, and that includes you, Chovy, because it's not good enough
Back
to
to
say I
talking
don't
about
agree
me.
with somebody else.
back to talking about me.
Somebody else
So,
is coming
Dan,
from, but
It's all about you. It's all about I. It's all
That's
about
exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, I can see what that
There's a
person
song
said
about
about
that.
it, but
I love
even
it.
though you can't
Dan,
do
in
that to
terms
me,
of the policies
It's got
that
to be
you're
about
speaking
me.
in terms of the policies that you're speaking about, Dan, because military recruitment has been dropping for years, and it didn't start at the beginning of Biden, so it's been actually dropping for a little while. And then, in terms of you're talking about the change the culture of the military, and that's where I think the confusion lies, because the culture really isn't changing per se. No, it's not. So then, and in looking at the actual diversity itself,
What do you know about that?
I mean,
About the
everything
culture of
that
the
these
military.
military leaders are putting out there. So in terms of studies,
Yeah, exactly.
in terms of these studies, military readiness and preparedness is actually better with more diverse military.
Well, I don't care about diversity. I think
Come on,
that
that's just
diversity
so-
is-
I'm going to ask
Diversity
Dan, can I ask you a
is It's not
question?
diversity. It's
It is a fact
prostitution.
that's actually been studied.
Okay,
Dan,
so they should
Christian.
have white people in the
Never mind. You don't seem to want to acknowledge the problem. So it's
Dan,
I'm
Dan,
done.
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do you think the U.S. military would be further advanced if the generals were concerned about what pronouns they were using and which majors they should redress?
Derek, that's
what
a
pronouns?
dumb
Would
question.
that make the
Well,
U.S.
no,
military-
yeah. Well,
I'm asking you,
I mean,
Dan.
you know, it's
So
relevant.
No, I'm not
again,
asking you.
I don't care. I don't care about that. I don't
No,
care
I
about
do.
that.
I care. I care.
You don't really care.
You have
You're making up
They
some
always
stupid
talk about
attack.
The
You're
left
making up a
always
ridiculous
go
attack.
to the right.
So again,
Oh, we don't want the
based
truth
on the
revealed.
studies, Dan.
Oh no! Don't reveal the truth. Let's scream, shout louder and louder. Nobody can hear us.
Hey, look at Derek getting excited. I love it. So Dan,
Stand on that.
Yeah.
you know what? In terms of affirmative action, when they carved out
See,
when
and
they
still
carved
good.
out
And they
the
just keep
corner of
going.
affirmative
Yeah,
action,
yeah, And my question was to Dan.
when they
Absolutely.
carved out the affirmative
It's a beautiful
action,
system.
when they had shot that down, the reason they had carved it out was based on the actual diversity within the military. That's the study that actually that stopped them from making it across the board, removing affirmative action.
China
So
doesn't
again, it
care
is
what
actually, in
pronoun
fact,
General so and
It
so
doesn't matter if you get closer to the camera and yell out your hatred towards that community. Derek,
I don't hate. I don't
Doesn't
hate.
matter.
I didn't hear any
Listen.
hatred.
So Dan-
I believe in the summer of love. The summer of
So
love.
Dan, here's another question that comes into play. When
Love
you
who you
say-
want to love, right? That's
when you're talking about American patriotism,
but just don't do it
are
in the
you
military.
saying that those who believe in diversity and want diversity aren't American patriots?
No, I'm not saying that at all. And that's
But
not
you-
what
you
Asking them a
made-
question,
you
Jack.
made-
You don't have to
about.
jump
You
in.
made the comment.
Dan can
that
speak for himself,
diversity
Jack.
makes the
Dan can
military
speak for
stronger.
himself.
So by your rationale, by your
Your
rationale,
definition of
you should be
diversity is different
suggesting
than
to
mine.
China that they need more trans people in the Chinese army in order for China to be a strong.
I think China would follow
diversity
suit.
only.
It would-
So
it would
according to
even
you,
things out
diversity
a little
only
more.
includes people in the LGBTQIA community. Is that
No,
what you're
is
saying?
that what I said? I used an example, right? China, who you might find this really strange, right? But the Chinese military is
Okay.
mostly made up of
Do you live in
Chinese.
China?
So
Do you live in
should we
China?
have should China?
He knows more about China than you do,
All the
Jacoby, so
military.
shut up.
Should
Sure.
China start
Sure he does,
having
Dan.
diverse races in their military? Should they have, should England say, look, what we really need is, well, England's already doing it. Should Africa say, look, what we need is more white people in our military, more people that aren't Christian in our military?
I think,
That's gonna
sure,
make-
why not?
Because apparently that's what makes the American military stronger is diversity quotas.
Look what's happening, guys.
So
the
actually,
BRICS nation,
again, the
the
study
BRICS
itself
nations.
shows that diversity improves the military. So what you're saying is that we should.
What's diversity, Jacoby? Define diversity for me?
Diversity is culture. Diversity is religion. Diversity is race. Diversity. I mean, it's everybody. Everybody must
So
be.
white Christians should make up that group.
So
then,
if
right?
there is, so for example, if there is an Iraqi American in the military, that would help us in Iraq. If there's a Pakistani American in the military, that helps us in Pakistan. If there are these,
but they've got to be sworn to the Constitution of the United States, right? Jacoby?
Dan, they're in the military. So again,
Yeah.
these individuals, what I'm saying,
Did you serve in the military, Jacoby?
Dan.
But yet you're sort of
No, I'm asking,
Dan.
did you serve in the
being
I
military?
white
can't
wingers
answer because
is
Shaq
about.
is talking over me.
No, I'm asking you, did you serve in the military?
Did I serve in the military? No, my uncle got a Purple Heart. So
Well, good, but what does that have to do with you and your knowledge about the military?
So I'm just ignorant to the military because my uncle was in the military. I didn't talk.
Well,
to
I
him.
know, but I'm asking, what did you ever do?
I didn't go to a military retirement party.
I got to run. I'm going to go ahead and end it today. I got to go. I want to thank everyone for being on the show. You guys
You
go
have
ahead
no
and finish
background
up.
to be able to talk about this, Jacoby, is my point. You have no
Dan,
experience.
Dan, that
You
makes
don't have to have experience. I mean, I don't have any experience, but I have
Exactly,
cousins that
Dan.
served in the military, and I've definitely studied the military. And have my dad that was in the Air Force, so I have a direct tie to the military. And he's not the biggest
But if
military
you
fan.
Dan,
Hang on a second.
Dan,
If you
Dan,
haven't
you were
served in the
stating-
military,
Oh, my grandpa fought in the Battle of
why are
Bulge.
you so
Dan,
insistent that
Dan,
diversity
by
makes
your
us
logic, Shaq cannot speak about American policy. He's not
Well,
an
I pay
American.
American.
He
I
shares
pay
his
American
opinion
taxes, so I can
about
speak on it, and it's
American
world
policy.
edition, which is why.
By
you
your
find
logic,
I
Dan,
myself.
Shaq can't speak about American
But-
policy.
But
Well,
Jacoby,
you don't know anything about the military. You've
if
never
you don't
served.
know anything
you
about the
you never
military
had
by
the
your own
training.
terms,
You don't have the
I
education
do
about
know about the
military.
military on my
Exactly.
own terms, Shaq.
You have
why
no
are you so
experience.
insistent?
Shaq, did you serve in the military? Shaq,
Who?
did you
I have-
serve in the military?
I
I
Did you
don't
serve
know
in
if
the
that matters. You're talking about me, not
Wait,
Shaq.
now you said that I
But why
can't
are you
talk
so
about it, but
insistent that
Shaq
the
can, and he didn't serve.
Well, he's not an
Why are you
American.
so insistent?
Dan, I'm
Hey,
That's why I
hold
said
on a
you
second. We got to
absolutely
get to speaking
Why
of
are you so
military.
insistent
We've got to
your-
get to
your
the
diversity
show
points
that
that
deals
He
with
needs to
Ukraine,
talk.
Russia, and China, which is Sasha's show coming up in about a minute or two. I was actually going to get to the BRICS conversation, and I'll find out more about that tomorrow because apparently they are getting ready to launch a new currency, ironically gold. So maybe we'll talk about that on tomorrow and all along those lines because I did see that, and actually Kimmy brought that up as well. So maybe we'll get to that conversation on tomorrow's show. But there are a number of things that I was going to get to as well. But definitely an enlightening and invigorating conversation. But right now, we're getting ready to get on out of here. And like I said, Sasha's got Ukraine, Russia, and China coming your way in less than a minute. So I'll catch y'all good folks on tomorrow. Today, but we do have a guest on Thursday. But right now,
Yep.
let's get
And
on
we're
out of here.
working on getting a Major League Cricket interview on Friday, the 14th, on the Major League Cricket and
Cricket?
Quigley Morrisville. Back tomorrow for another edition of World Edition. We'll be talking a little bit more about the elections and concerns about Biden walking off a news set, and also yesterday on CNN, the fact that
Walking
he's
up
using-
where?
he's cursing like a sailor these days, apparently, and so I'm gonna dive into that, President Biden. But we'll be back tomorrow for another edition of World Edition. Thank you for being with us wherever you are in the world, and have a great summer wherever you are. Thank you so much.